The one and only Garland Nixon is up next. Garland, thanks for joining us. I'm sorry it's a slightly truncated interview this evening because of the sheer pace and scale of events. But before turning to what's happening to Donald Trump and Joe Biden, can I just get your take on whether you think American public opinion is as one-sided as the entire political spectrum in the United States government and opposition, including Robert F. Kennedy? It's monolithic for Israel in America, or is it down on the street?
Absolutely not. This is another example of the United States government having, completely disassociated itself with U.S. public opinion. The public opinion of the U.S. has been drifting away from the supporting unconditional support for the U.S. government, for the Israeli government for years. However, the extreme nature of the Smotrich, Ben Gvir, and Netanyahu government has pushed many well-meaning Americans and many, honest Americans who really want to understand the conflict away from the government, away from the Israeli government. Even a lot of people that don't understand the history look at the extreme and violent nature of the current leaders of that government, and they are aghast at what they see. So there will be a problem in the in this election year as a result of this particular conflict, expanding, because the parties will certainly take the position that Israel is right and that the Palestinians should, face some kind of a violent retribution. And that, I don't think that will be very popular amongst the American electorate, particularly amongst youth, and very much in the Democratic Party. I think the numbers will probably be above 50% when it comes to the people who don't support a violent retribution by the Israeli government.
Some of the political leaders are really quite unhinged. I mean, I watched Nikki Haley appear to call for the genocide. Finish them all, she said. She appeared, her eyes were swiveling, totally unhinged, and she's running for president. What is it? Anya Parampil, a good friend of both of us, said online just an hour or two ago, isn't it amazing how the worst people in America are so in love with Israel? It's true.
Well, and, in the Republican presidential primary, various politicians have staked out a particular position. She staked out the Lindsey Graham, John McCain position to be the most hawkish of hawks. So what you can expect from her is the most over-the-top, outlandish, violent position on everything, whether it's Ukraine or the Middle East, Iran, etc. She's taken the position of the John Bolton of the Republican primary, and I think she thinks that's going to benefit her. I can guarantee you that it will get her a lot of money, but it's not going to get her the numbers, as even amongst the populist right, there's less and less, appetite for violence and war.
Speaking of the populist right, their leader for the moment is Donald Trump, though he wavered over whether to go for the speakership of the House. I think that's history now, but showed his ebullience, his enthusiasm, his determination. But is that all a front when, with all these legal suits against him, seeking to literally dismantle his business, take his houses, even the ones he's living in? Can he realistically get to the starting line in November in good enough shape to run?
If Donald Trump, the person, can take the amount of pressure that they're putting on him, and I suspect that he can, because Trump is a person who tends to like a fight, who tends to be a fighter and push back. I would think that in the long term, that the results of the deep state assault, a lawfare assault on Donald Trump, will, paradoxically benefit him at the polling booth. That as things begin to unravel much further than they have now, and that's the direction that we're going. It's clear that the Ukraine conflict is in collapse, and certainly we've got the issues here in the Middle East. That as those things get more and more troublesome for the American people, that they will look for an outsider. Donald Trump is running as the anti-politician, as the outsider. Now, this is even a tough situation for him in the Middle East, because he took the position during his administration as an arch-Zionist, as he tried to, out-Zionist Joe Biden. And his comments recently, he had a speech, I believe, in Iowa, Idaho, wherever. He had a speech, and he simply said, well, if I were president, this wouldn't have happened because I'm strong and Biden's weak. So he really didn't take a philosophical, political, or moral position on the conflict in Israel. He simply took an individual position, saying basically, I'm the right-wing strongman, and if that were, if I were in power, all the bad guys out there in the world would run from me, and they wouldn't take actions against Israel or anyone else. So he oversimplified it. I don't know how long he can continue with an oversimplification of such a nuanced and historical problem, but I think it'll work for him for a while, in that people are focusing on, the bond market, a potential economic crash. There's a lot of problems here in the United States that I think Donald Trump will probably be able to navigate his way through.
Well, you better hope that there's no major developments in the South China Sea. Because a war in Eastern Europe, a war in the Middle East, and dramatic developments in the Straits of Taiwan would test all of them very considerably. But he's going to use this. He's already doing it. He's saying that America gave $6 billion to Iran, which is false, of course. This was Iran's $6 billion. That was frozen in South Korea and was merely unfrozen. Secondly, it went to Qatar and is to be distributed on very specific goods. But Donald Trump never let the truth get in the way of a good story. So that's his number one point, that Joe Biden gave $6 billion to Iran, and Iran gave it to Hamas. And that Hamas are using it to kill Israeli settlers and soldiers. Secondly, the point you've just made, his line is that nobody respects America because Joe Biden is a shuffling old fool. And I'm afraid Biden's kind of proving that point almost on a daily basis now.
Oh, absolutely. And things have gotten to a point where if you just talk to people on the street, people who are not even, say, politically, concerned, and I use this word and I don't mean it in a pejorative way, politically sophisticated, people who don't read politics and don't engage in researching politics, day-to-day people, it's pretty well acknowledged that Joe Biden has some mental acuity deficiency, shall we say. Everyone knows it. It's the emperor has no clothes. It's just that the mainstream media can't discuss it. Even so much so that Joe Biden supporters kind of acknowledge it, but they'll say, but even that, he's still better than Trump because Donald Trump is so bad. This is a difficult position for Donald Trump, I think, because Donald Trump's strength, keep in mind, his core support is going to support him come hell or high water. So he doesn't have to say things about Iran or Israel or anything to keep them. He has them. Where Donald Trump's strength is in the people who are tired of the system and the people that are angry, people who are, say, independents, and to some level, some Democrats, maybe libertarians. And his talk of Iran as the bad guys, or pushing back against Iran, or making statements that would make it appear as though he can be somewhat hawkish, are actually not in his best interest. Donald Trump is at his strongest, and he makes the most. He pulls in the most energy when he takes either anti-war positions, anti-conflict, if not anti-war, at least anti-conflict. I don't want more conflict. I want a deal. So it doesn't benefit Donald Trump to say Iran's bad guys and we shouldn't do this or that with Iran. His strength is saying, I don't want a war with Iran. I don't want a war with anyone. So it even makes it tough for Donald Trump to take a position in this conflict.
Joe Biden hasn't forgotten Ukraine, even if the media has for the moment. He's going to bring forward what they're calling a one and done deal for Ukraine. $100 billion on top of the $190 billion they've already spent, on the principle that this $100 billion will take us past the presidential election. Can that be serious? And would it go through today's Congress?
Well, next week, we're looking at the likelihood of a Speaker of the House vote. The two people who are running would be Steve Scalise of Louisiana, who was one of McCarthy's closest lieutenants. And I would expect that if Steve Scalise is in charge, then there's a good chance that it'll get through. It's going to be tough. Well, there's a chance. I don't know. I'm not even going to say a good chance. Jim Jordan is the other person who is vying for the speakership. He is more supported by Trump. He's more supported by the populist wing of the Republican Party. So I would imagine it would be tougher. There will be tremendous pressure on them. I would think that if they get this through, particularly at this time, when support for this conflict and the neocon project is waning in the EU, just before winter, when there's a potential for very significant energy problems, at a time when clearly the Ukrainian offensive has flopped, and the numbers are ghastly.
Over.
Yeah. So it's a very difficult time. If they would get this through, it could be really bad, because they get this this through, they get this money through, and then this thing collapses or spirals downhill out of control, as it is likely to do. When I mean out of control, I mean out of control for the Zelensky regime. This getting, be careful what you pray for. You might just get it. If they get this $100 billion and then things collapse, then Joe Biden's going to suffer as a result of that, and there'll be heavy pushback. They may be better, if this thing is close to collapse, not to do that. So it's going to be tough. I don't really think it gets through. Not $100 billion. I think they cut it down. They should get something through. But the Ukraine conflict is on its last leg. And with it, the Biden administration,
Garland
because
Nixon.
a second debacle. Well, go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to thank you, but I'm glad you made that last point. The Ukrainian cause is on its last legs, just like the Biden administration. Thank you for joining us, as always.